Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Raji Pillai, and I welcome you all to this event on behalf of IBPW. Please note that the event is being recorded, so you and others may enjoy it at a later time. Indian Business and Professional Women, or IBPW, is a nonprofit networking organization founded in 1994. It mentors women to achieve their professional milestones. The founder of IBPW is Deepka Lalwani, who is here with Ruth Bader Ginsburg on her background. Deepka, please say hello.
Hello from Ruth.
Okay, great. And then Silicon Valley Reads is also a nonprofit, a community engagement program that unites people through books and an annual theme. The Silicon Valley Reads 2026 theme is oh, Bridges to
I gotta
Belonging.
read my
Sorry.
screen.
Yes. Um, it's organized by the Santa Clara County Office of Education, the Santa Clara County Library, and the San Jose Public Library Foundation. Every year, Silicon Valley Reads schedules more than 200 events in the San Francisco Bay Area in February and March around its annual theme, this year, Bridges to Belonging. And the person behind most of it is the executive director, Reed Myers, who has done so much for each of these 200 events, including this one. Reed, please say hello.
Oh, you're so sweet, Raji. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. And thank you to our authors. We're so excited for this conversation.
So our special thanks to Deepka and to Reed for making this event possible. Welcome again, everyone. And how this event is going to unfold is I will start by introducing each of our three wonderful authors on this panel. I've had the huge pleasure of reading their three books over the holidays, and I'm so excited to speak with you all about them and to have them speak to you about their books. I will start with Elizabeth Eastwood, who is the author of I'm with Them. You can see that on my background. I'm with Them, Lessons from My Children. There you go. Elizabeth Eastwood is the pen name of a retired writer, editor, and publisher of curriculum materials and textbooks for elementary school students. A former teacher, she produced teaching guides and authored articles and newsletters about best practices. In the early 1990s, she adopted two Peruvian children as a single woman and raised them in a suburb of San Francisco. Eastwood divides her time between California and her native Wisconsin, where she likes to hike, bike, kayak, read novels, and write about life's everyday challenges. Elizabeth, please say hello. Oh, please unmute yourself.
Hi. Hi,
Welcome.
Raji. Raji, thank you for putting this together. All your hard
Absolutely.
work. Amazing.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, our next author is La'Tonya Rease Miles. She is the author of Smart Girl over here on my screen, and there you go. As a first-generation college graduate and thought leader in higher education, La'Tonya Rease Miles, PhD, has been instrumental in establishing successful programs for first-gen students at both UCLA and Loyola Marymount University. Currently, she's executive director of My Tribe Media, a nonprofit media advocacy organization, and is an adjunct faculty in the Department of Educational Leadership at Santa Clara University. LT earned an undergraduate degree in English language and literature from the University of Maryland at College Park and has a PhD in American literature from UCLA. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins!
Great.
Go Terps.
Yes. The third author is Neerja Raman, who's written a lovely book called Chemistry of Belonging, which you can see on my screen and on Neerja's screen. A scientist and writer, Neerja Raman pioneered research in digital media at HP Labs that led to inventions like digital cameras and digital publishing. At Stanford University, her research in internet-enabled education led to increased access for marginalized and remote communities. In 2005, Neerja was inducted into the Women in Technology International Hall of Fame. She was named to Silicon Valley Business Journal's 50 Most Influential Women list. She has authored 2 fiction novels, a self-empowerment guide based on the Bhagavad Gita, and the recent memoir honors her parents. Raman was born in India and came to New York as a graduate student in chemistry. Welcome, Neerja.
Glad to be here, and thank you.
Wonderful. So, what I'd like to do is, as I invite each author to speak about their books and to read a little bit from us so that all of you viewers can get a flavor of their books, I'm going to start with a quote. And what I'd like to do now is share a quote, and I will share my screen in a minute. We lost the Reverend Jesse Jackson earlier this week. And that was, a big loss, a person who has done so much for our community, for our country. So let me share my screen for a moment to share this quote with you.
Nice.
So the quote is, I am somebody. I am somebody. I may be small, but I am somebody. I may have made mistakes, but I am somebody. My clothes are different. My face is different. My hair is different, but I am somebody. I am black, brown, or white. I speak a different language, but I must be respected, protected, never rejected. I am God's child. I am somebody. So what I would like to do is ask Elizabeth to speak about her book. Elizabeth, you grew up in Wisconsin, moved to California, and worked in the San Francisco Bay Area. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I suppose my inspiration is my 2 children, of course, but they didn't need me to write the book. They lived it. My thinking was that I had a different perspective on what it's like to to experience color and belonging issues as I raised them, and I thought I wanted people to know what it's like. I grew up in a place that was very white. My family was, white. My neighbors were white. All the kids in school were white, and so belonging wasn't really an issue for me. And I was really naive adopting these 2 brown kids and not realizing how things would play out in their lifetime. So my book is about that, and I'm hoping that people will read it and see what it was like. So
Thank you. And may I invite you to read for a minute or two from your book?
okay. The section on schools.
Please.
Yes. So schooling was always a big issue for us, as it may have been for everybody in this group. But I thought, well, I needed to find a place to live that would be perfect for them, neighborhood, schools, and so forth. So I was looking around just as Jessica was about to go into kindergarten.
Mhm.
And I remembered that my adoption counselor had said, you really should find a place where they will have people like them, surrounded by people like them, and that go to school with kids that look like them. So I looked and looked, and I wasn't sure. In California in particular, there can be a lot of problems with the quality of the schools. So I wanted the very best for my kids. So anyway, I will read this and see what you think. Elmwood School was a beautiful setting, was as beautiful a setting as I remember from my quick trip tour before buying the house. What I didn't foresee was how different we would feel as a family in the school district. In income level, many of the families were extremely wealthy. Family structure, most families had two parents, and ethnicity. There were a few Latinos in the school. Yes, the class sizes were relatively small. The teachers were well-qualified professionals who knew how to maintain control in the classroom. The curriculum was top-notch. Had I toured the campus during school hours, I would have realized that the diversity I'd hoped for would not be reflected in the first 9 impressionable years of my children's school experience. All the effort I had put into making sure my children are immersed in diverse childcare centers and preschools counted for little once they started kindergarten at Elmwood School. All through elementary school, neither Jessica nor Martin would ever have a teacher of color. The relatively few Black and Latino children were sprinkled evenly among the 8 classes at each grade level. That gave the majority white kids a taste of diversity, but almost always prevented racial minorities from having even one playmate of the same race, ethnicity, and gender in their class. Martin often came home disappointed on the first day of school when he discovered that he and his friend Jose were assigned to different classrooms once again. The one year that Jose ended up in his class, the teacher had difficulty telling them apart. The same was true for Jessica and a biracial girl her age. They look like twins, the teachers would say, even though they look completely different to me. No matter their race, people who spend most of their time in segregated environments tend to distinguish features of their own race better than those of different races.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Let me invite Neerja and La'Tonya to comment if this reading, brought up any thoughts in you. Maybe Neerja, would you, if you have anything to comment on, please do. Just wanted.
It just did make me think about when I was bringing up, when I came to the US in 1970, and my first child, when she went to school, she was the only Indian person. And there weren't any Indians here at that time. She was the only Indian girl in school, and nobody had any clue who we were at that time. And there was a big change between when she went and my next daughter, 5 years later, was a big change. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's
So
interesting.
interesting.
It did
Thank
remind me.
Thank you. Yeah, La'Tonya, please.
Just really quickly, but my book is about my story, and what's sad is how much hasn't changed. If I were to write a book about my own children who grew up in a very cosmopolitan area in Los Angeles and yet found themselves oftentimes one of few Black students, especially in honors classes, and having a teacher tell me directly that if there was a white student that had not been designated honors but wanted to be in honors as a social promotion so that they're not with Black and Latino kids, that they would honor that. The principal told me that directly. It wasn't anything hidden, so I'm not surprised, unfortunately.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Let me move on now to you, La'Tonya. I want, as I mentioned, the quotes. Let me share a couple of quotes that I would love to introduce your book and readings with.
Sure.
Um, so one is from Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote this book to his son, Between the World and Me. You are growing into consciousness, and my wish for you is that you feel no need to constrict yourself to make other people comfortable. And then the wonderful, wonderful Jacqueline Woodson, who wrote about her own stories. Stories can be windows, but also mirrors. So windows through which you can see the lives of others and mirrors in which you see yourself. And your book, La'Tonya, is so much, it has windows and mirrors. So let me ask you, You grew up in Virginia, South Carolina. You write about your early love for reading. And one more quote from your book, if I may. I didn't have any literary guardrails, and my imagination was allowed to roam free. How wonderful is that?
Mhm.
No book was ever considered off limits or inappropriate. If I could reach it on the shelf, then I was permitted to read it. So tell us about your family and growing up and what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, what was mentioned at the beginning is my professional career, which has been primarily dedicated to supporting and affirming first generation college students. And by first gen, I mean students whose parents or caregivers have not completed a 4-year degree in the United States. And that was an epiphany for me. I made it all the way through my doctorate until before I realized, oh my gosh, I'm first gen. Um, and I've created programs like was described earlier at UCLA, at LMU, all across the country. However, this book is really about my own personal journey. So it's more answering the two questions. It would be, why did I create the programs that I create? And then how did I get to college? My father had a high school diploma. My mom had taken some community college classes by the time I had gone to college, but for all intents and purposes, I am first, now know that I'm first generation of college. I also wanted to focus specifically on what is it on the intersectional identity of being Black and first gen, but and also working class. So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I actually consider myself like an East Coast person, not committed to one state necessarily, and came to California for graduate school. So this book is my educational journey through 9 different public schools. Let me say that again. 9 public schools by 10th grade. And then I also was a multi-time transfer student in college as well. That's the gist. Oh, it's all about, you can tell from my cover, all about my love for sport and pop culture and comics.
Yes, yes. Oh, absolutely wonderful how you weave that, in your life, in your book. So let me invite you to read from the book,
Sure.
if you will.
Yeah. Okay, so let me acknowledge Gen X. If anyone is Generation X, those of us who are not millennials, we're not boomers, we kind of get left out of the conversation. I think some of these references may resonate with you because I also wanted to capture that experience as well too. So this is just a little bit about what it was like for T, as my family calls me, TEE, when I started school. I felt shy in school, and I did not actively seek attention. Rather, I preferred to stay away from the spotlight, but I stood out anyway. Regularly, I was the teacher's pet student and often was nudged to perform in some way, whether it was in a school assembly or grade-wide spelling bee. Teachers and administrators regarded me as a model student, which seemed rare for Black pupils, it seemed. I was like a cyborg, someone to be studied and monitored. Announcer, La'Tonya Rease Miles, first grader, a Black working class girl raised by a single mother and her grandparents. Gentlemen, we can rebuild her. We have the technology. I knew that I was different from my peers, including my cousins, somehow, but most importantly, I knew that I had a responsibility to do well in school, not just for myself, but for the whole family, my block, and even the race. This is what it meant to be smart. As the designated family representative, I was aware I had opportunities that my mother, grandmother, aunties, and cousins did not. My success or failure was everyone's success and cause for widespread celebration. I felt the weight of that responsibility like a Girl Scout. I wanted to make my family proud and to support them the way that they had supported me. Better, stronger, faster. This recognition was evident as early as second grade. Grandma Daisy and Uncle Dale, still in high school at the time, were excited when they found out that my class was taking a field trip to the Alexandria City Hall and that we would have an opportunity to meet with the mayor. Our homework was to come up with a question that we would ask him. On the surface, Maury Elementary School, which has now been renamed, by the way, seemed egalitarian. Students from all backgrounds and walks of life were in the same physical space, including the children of congressmen who got to claim that they were of the people because they sent their children to public schools. But there was a clear racialized hierarchy already forming and subtle clues about who was bright and who wasn't. The Peters, Matts, and Megs of the school were separated from the Keishas, Bufords, and Donnells within the same classroom, divided up by reading level and giftedness. And then there was me, in the same math group as White Peter, lover of some weird movie called Star Wars, but walking home to our predominantly white and working class neighborhood with Donnell, whose prized possession was a pair of nunchucks. These divisions started early and lasted all the way through high school. Regularly, I traversed between worlds, slipping from one reality to another, like crossing a hidden threshold, where the rules, the language, and even the expectations of who I was supposed to be shifted with every step. You'll have to read the book to find out what question I asked the mayor, by the way. It's really funny.
Yes, it is a wonderful question. Thank you for reading. And let me invite Elizabeth to comment first, and then Neerja, if you have any comments on this lovely reading.
Well, I loved the whole book. I've read it cover to cover, and it's great. It is a mirror, uh, exactly of what you were talking about, Raji. A mirror and a window,
Mhm.
because I felt like my kids and she had very, very different backgrounds, but they ran into some of the very same issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Neerja, any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the reading, and I really love the tone of how you relate the whole experience. It gives you the impression of being a child, and as well as gives you a lot of information of that time. So it's very clever and very nice how you've done that. Very interesting. I could definitely relate to it, of course.
Thank you so much. I worked hard to make sure it was a perspective of me at the time and not
Yeah,
me looking backwards.
yeah, exactly. And you got that perfectly.
Well, thank you.
It's tough. Yeah.
Thanks to my editors.
Great. So let me move on to Neerja and her wonderful book. And again, a quote to share with you, because somehow this quote resonated with me and Neerja's whole ethos. So, a generous heart is always open, always ready to receive our going and coming. In the midst of such love, we need never fear abandonment. This is the most precious gift true love offers, the experience of knowing we always belong. And this is a quote from the wonderful Bell Hooks. So, Neerja, you share so many wonderful lessons in your book from each of your parents and the values they instilled in you and your sister, and as they raised you with great love in India. Uh, Tell us what inspired you to write this book.
Um, I think partly it is the times that we grew up in. Mainly the inspiration comes from my mother. It's a lot about her life. The book is actually not about me as much as it is about my parents and grandparents. And I started thinking about it when she was passing away. And as the thing says, these are divisive times. We lived in troubled times. And then I think about it, we tend to we're living in tough times. And then I think about my parents and my grandparents. They grew up in colonial India. They made a life. And when we were born, the effects of colonialism were very strong. And yet, somehow, and this was the reflection that I'm doing in the book, they managed to bring us up with a great deal of love and understanding and an ethos of you need to respect everybody, and no matter how different you are, and they were not hard on us. They were not soft on us. School was important, but at the same time, I never felt that I was being told do this or told that. Somehow it was all in there. And I thought if I would capture it through the stories rather than saying this is what they did, it might help people relate and definitely make for more interesting reading.
Right.
That's how the book is structured.
Yes, and it's just very enjoyable, the stories that you tell, they just kind of, I had to know what was going on. It's, for so many interesting stories. So let me invite you to read, if you would, from the book. And I think it's, the section you're going to read is about when you were a little girl going to a convent school, a Catholic school for the first time, and then what happened after that.
Yeah. So, thank you. Yeah. In a way, since we're doing about schooling, this is about how I was schooled. And I had just been, this was my first school. I had just been enrolled in a convent school. My sister and I had both been sent there. And it's only been a few weeks. And my parents are called in for a meeting by the teacher. This was very unusual in a convent school in those days. And so I'm going to start with that. My parents have come to school. The school principal waited while my parents settled themselves in the school office. Mr. and Mrs. Gupta, I suppose it is inconvenient for you to take time off to be here, but you will understand why we must do this in person. I feigned disinterest and made myself invisible. Your second daughter is not behaving well. The principal leaned forward in a high-backed chair to emphasize the serious nature of the subject. She's young. She misses her mother, Papa said. My daughter will adjust soon, Amma said. We don't speak English at home. That is why she won't talk here. I had become quiet at home too, and it worried my mother. Sister was unmoved. Your elder daughter is learning. She speaks in English with us. The problem is only with your second daughter. She doesn't talk. When she needs to go to the bathroom, she asks in sign language. Please, give her time, Amma pleaded. Both your girls started knowing no English. Your elder daughter is quiet but listens. The younger one refuses to listen. She is stubborn. Sister did not mention she had rapped my knuckles with a steel side blade of the 12-inch ruler she kept in her drawer. This practice was not uncommon in missionary schools, so perhaps she felt it to be an unnecessary detail. My mother discreetly patted my leg, encouraged me to speak, and prove sister wrong. I kept mum. But the sound of my parents pleading with the sister, I couldn't stand anymore. The urge to pee became overwhelming. I fidgeted and I pointed outside. See, this is how she behaves. Rude, rolling eyes, and paying no attention in class. Who can instruct this child? Sister needed the fees. So I'm going to stop there, and it goes on for the rest of
Yes. Oh, I can just feel the little girl's discomfort, in that room with the principal being all, horrible.
and more for my parents than myself. I really didn't want them to be there. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
So tell us, what did your parents do after this meeting with the principal?
Well, I think my parents had a very no blame philosophy kind of a thing, and I don't know if you want me to read the part. I can just say that I refused to go to school, so my sister continued, and they took me out of that school and put me in a local government school. The government school standards in those days, this is just were really poor. I mean, most people came there to get fed, and it was I wasn't learning anything, and that bothered my parents. And so the solution they came up with, they never said that the nuns were wrong or I was wrong, and there was no blame. But eventually they took us both out of that school and put me in a Montessori school, very far away from the convent school.
Right. Would you like to read a little bit from the Montessori school? You can also speak to it as you wish.
Yeah, no, I can read the one from the Montessori school.
Yes, your mom's,
my mom's voice.
Yes, mom's voice, your mom's advice. This
my
is
mom's
just so
advices.
wonderful.
Yeah. So we've just joined the Montessori school, and I still don't know English and all that. So one evening, soon after we joined the Montessori school, I returned home from the playground with scraped knees and a torn frock. I had fought with my classmates because they made fun of us, my sister and me. Our frocks with hemlines below the knees were old fashioned. We spoke English with a Hindi accent. We were from a trader caste. We were vegetarian. Our parents forbade us from going to the cinema. And the worst of all, we didn't have any money because why else would my mother work? My mother was a professional and unusual in those days. Gigi had stayed quiet. Gigi is my sister. I got into a brawl. Amma was not happy when she saw me. We were defending ourselves, but it turned into a fight, I explained. What they said is true. So why did you fight? Amma asked. They made us feel like we were less than them. You are not less than them. You can't deny facts. They just said facts. But you can't deny their judgment. The facts don't show inferiority. So why bother to get angry? I just can't stay quiet. Stay calm. Respond by saying, there is nothing wrong with your accent or your clothes, your caste or your dark skin or whatever. Stay calm. Maybe they didn't mean to hurt. How do you know? Or maybe they just don't know any better. Anger hurts you, not them. If you don't get angry, they will get bored and stop. What if they continue? I asked. Even then, do not fight. Fighting says you accept their viewpoint. And I think you had a quote earlier that's, or maybe it comes later, that speaks to that. Stand your ground without getting into a fight, or walk away till you feel you can talk to them. Amma wrapped it all up by saying, you know what we think is right for you. So in our playground fights, I had started by pretending that I was not hurt. I used to pretend that. When it was easier for my sister, Gigi was tall, fair, and beautiful. After that day, when she got angry, her nostrils flared, her eyes radiated fire, but she rarely engaged in backtalk and never in a fight. Dark skinned, short, and without her confidence, it was harder for me to control myself. But gradually, the pretense became reality. I realized fighting served only to delay the conversations necessary to stand for myself. I learned it is the powerless who resort to violence. When I projected self confidence on who I was, we stopped the pettiness and started making new friends.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, La'Tonya, Elizabeth, anything you'd like to add?
Well, it was beautiful. Just maybe two things. One, I love stories about unruly girls. We need more stories about
I was about
young
as unruly as you can
women
get.
holding their ground and um, fighting back no matter how that fight looks. And then I also want to acknowledge your parents for supporting you. And as you said, didn't really judge and really listening to you and hearing you out. That's just really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
They gave you just such beautiful advice. They just seemed like, how did they know how to operate in that world?
They grew up in colonial India. They were told they were inferior.
They knew.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting because it just reminded me of a story when my brother and I were kids. My brother, our natures are very different. He's a very gentle, I think from when he was a baby, he was like a gentleman. Not me. But he would go to school and he'd get bullied and come back crying. And apparently my parents had said, turn the other cheek, etc. So they got tired of all this crying and him being, bullied all the time. So when it came my turn, they were like, somebody hits you, go for it. And that was my nature too. So, there was a little boy who one day at lunch inexplicably came and squeezed a piece of orange in my eye. And I was shocked and crying and ran home, uh, but didn't say anything. Asked my mom if I could have an orange for lunch the next day, which I took to school and peeled and took to the unsuspecting boy and squeezed it in his eye. And of course, the teacher said, what are you doing? I said, he did it yesterday. She asked him, did you? He said, yes. And that was the end of that. So there's different ways to respond, is what I'm saying. But I think your parent
Yeah.
advice was just very, I don't know, it worked for you. It worked well for
Well,
you.
I think it took time. And I think the key is you cannot deny the facts. But that doesn't mean that that makes you inferior. When somebody says something to you, whether I'm brown or black, or
Yes.
like I mean, part of my book, I say when I was in New York in those days, they thought I was black. And when I came here, they thought I was Hispanic but, it doesn't matter that that's what what they're saying is they're different. And I am
Yeah.
different. So if I choose
Yes.
to get mad at that, that's not going to allow me to have a conversation and help
Right.
understand. And I think I found that because whenever I was mad, I got more beat up. So
Oh
I was
gosh.
pretty small as a kid. So
Yeah. So you
yeah,
quickly figured out what
I
worked.
figured out that beating up wasn't gonna get me anywhere.
Yes. Wonderful. Gosh. Yeah. So I encourage everyone to read all these books. They're just really beautifully written and moving and inspiring. So I want to move on to a topic, we've been talking a little bit about it, but, racism and othering, all of the color, belonging, othering. Let's talk about othering. So I will share a quote from one of the greatest literary figures, literary royalty, practically celestial in my view. But the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing, right? The great, great Toni Morrison. So I wanted to invite our authors to share your experiences and perspectives on othering. Elizabeth, I know there's, section with what your different sections with what your children have experienced, and if you would like to either read or speak to an experience that your son had, please do.
All right. It's from a chapter called It's the Police. My son had several problems in his lifetime, so I will read about that. Mom, please don't. Martin pleaded when I told him I planned to complain to the police chief about what happened that evening. This is exactly why I don't tell you stuff. You always overreact. The experience Martin had reluctantly shared with me made me furious. He was walking downtown to meet up with a friend. Suddenly, an oversized black SUV sped into a driveway right in front of him, blocking the sidewalk. Two white men jumped out. No uniforms, no badges, no identification on the car. Probably plainclothes police, judging by the holstered weapons Martin spotted. Without explaining who they were or why they had stopped him, they demanded to see identification. Martin looked older to them, but he just turned 14, too young to have a driver's license. Suddenly, just as abruptly as they had appeared, the two officers jumped back into the SUV and sped away. Martin didn't say much about how he felt, but the tremor in his voice, the fire in his glassy eyes, and the tension in his jaw betrayed the impact the incident had on his sense of safety. As the story sank in, I became terrified too. I yielded to his plea, but I often wished that I had filed the complaint. I wanted the police department to acknowledge that this was a clear case of racial profiling. I needed them to understand the ramifications of confrontations like this on my son's sense of self-worth. How would he ever again feel safe in the presence of police officers? Martin now fit the profile of a juvenile delinquent, male, brown skin, under 18. Where white teens were given the benefit of the doubt, he was viewed with suspicion. Neighbors called the police when he went for walks. Patrol cars would slow down when they spotted him. Officers assumed he was casing cars or homes to rob. Distrustful grocery store clerks followed Martin up and down the aisles, ready to call the police if they caught him thieving. Jessica had similar experiences, but her gender meant that she was viewed as less threatening. One day, while sitting on the grass in a San Jose park with his friend Ethan, hoping to get into a Please Don't Fight concert, a police officer approached them. You two were seen throwing rocks at cars. It wasn't us, they replied. If I see you in this park again, I'm going to arrest you, the officer raged. Ethan, who is white, his friend, shrugged off the threat. He assumed it was safe to stay for the concert. Let's go find seats. Martin felt far more threatened. I think it's time for me to go home. I would say that following this, we all learned of a lot of far worse horrors in the news. And one of them, it was particularly hard for me, was Tamir Bryce. Remember him, the kid with the toy gun?
The toy gun.
Yeah. And he was shot and killed. So, and when I looked at the picture of him, he looked just like David, like Martin, my son.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, it just broke my heart. So
thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. My gosh. La'Tonya, Neerja, would you like to share any thoughts on this really moving, kind of really sobering reading?
Neerja, I don't know if you wanted to go first.
I would just say it seems very heartfelt and really makes you resonate and understand the person. So very heartfelt.
Yeah, I don't have much to add.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So this brings us to the question, why do people other others, right? Why does this happen? What is going on in their minds when they say, you are different, you are not one of us, you do not belong here? So again, in the spirit of, leaning on others who have said it before, you all know that one of, John Powell is one of the great writers and scholars. He's a professor at the University of California at Berkeley. He was the national director of the ACLU, and he is one of the three authors that was showcased by the Silicon Valley Reads Bridges to Belonging theme. And at the kickoff event, he spoke. And he's just the gentlest, wisest person, it seemed. Somehow just listening to him ratchets down tensions. I don't know how this happens. It's who he is, it seems. Most of the othering is actually in service of belonging. If I want to belong and I'm straight and gays are the other, I can't like gays because I risk getting kicked out of my group. So othering is basically any time we say that someone is not being a full human being, not seen. And then another one, nothing disrupts dehumanization more quickly than inviting someone over, looking into their eyes, hearing their voice, and listening. And John Powell, again, the best way to combat indifference and hatred is through empathy and understanding. So I think, Neerja, your book has so many of these values and messages learned from your parents and from your personal experience. There's one particular incident that was a difficult incident when you were working in Silicon Valley. And, when a colleague approached you and started saying stuff that, would take anyone aback. So if you would share that incident with your colleague, Steve, either read or speak to it as you wish.
I think I'll just read. It might be
Sure.
faster.
Sure.
So I've finished college, and this is my first job, and I'm just so happy because I'm earning money. And I'm full of like optimism. And I have one day come into work, and one day a colleague, let's call him Steve, joined me at lunch. So, you Indians, you are like red Indians, right? What is your tribe called? Such verbiage was not uncommon in those days. But having lived in America only a few years, and that too on a college campus where my host family had welcomed me at their Christmas and Thanksgiving family celebrations, this came as a shock. I could not tell if he was ignorant or being confrontational. Steve, I'm from India. You know, there's a difference. It's a different country. Columbus made a mistake. What's the difference? America, India, Indians are the same everywhere. No written language, no culture. Now, Steve had a PhD in biochemistry. So now I'm representing India and America, I thought. I could not think of a rejoinder. The British I had met in India, if they spoke like that, meant to offend. Did Steve mean to offend? True, I knew little about the original inhabitants of America, but still seems like neither did Steve. However, thanks to my mother, I was well versed in Indian literature, which included a smattering of Sanskrit philosophy. It was a choice, not to take offense. Are you sure you mean this? I do not know much as I should about Native Americans, but our Indian music and culture dates back 5,000 years. It is documented in hundreds of Sanskrit texts, and modern India has not one, but 14 official languages with their own original scripts and distinct literature. Oh, yeah? What literature do you Indians have? Name one writer I may have heard of. In what language? How many languages do you know, Steve? So then I talk a little bit more about that. And then I go on. I decided that if I keep talking, he's going to have to calm down. So I later on, I talk a little bit about how they did not, Columbus sailed because he wanted to prove the world round, and how Copernicus was actually, they did not believe that the world was round. And so how all that started. So I go on with that. And then finally, um, after clearly he's calmed down a little bit, I wanted to give him an olive branch, and so I I had been reading Steinbeck. We read a lot of English authors, or UK authors, but not as many Americans. So I asked him, what does he know, and he says he knows Shakespeare, and then I told him, my favorite author was Steinbeck, and he knew about that. And after that, we got a common ground, and we talked about California. And so I said that, I need to learn a lot about America too. So, I understand. So I basically ended up, and we were colleagues. I mean, those labs were very small. So it's not like we could afford to not get along. And he was fine. I mean, I think he was just, everybody needs to establish their little, jousting.
Right, right. And then, yeah, it was gracious of you, even though obviously you were knowledgeable, you were trying to dispel all this
Yeah,
ignorance, and, it was gracious of you to extend that olive branch, and it's true, we all have much to learn about everything. And you
exactly.
said, don't feel bad. I have a lot of catching up to do about America. It's
Yeah.
very nice olive branch to make sure you could work together with this person. So yeah, that's great. So yeah, any thoughts, Elizabeth, La'Tonya?
Well, I mean, I wondered if he would talk that way to other people in the organization, or was this this is how we
No,
talk to
he wouldn't.
you.
He wouldn't. So after
Yeah.
reading my book, many other people I've shared this with, a lot of Indians have had this exact same conversation. So this is not an. I mean, I hesitated to put it in the book because it's so bad, but then everybody said it was fine. It was just a way of sort of jousting, and I think the thing I grateful to my mother was that she always and actually it's in the introduction of the book is take the high road. If somebody is not because later on, if you're going to influence their thinking, if I'm going to fight, it's not necessarily going to influence his thinking. So if I had decided that I'm not going to talk to Steve, but I could not influence his thinking. As it turned out, he did come to know a lot about our languages and different customs and all of that, and it's okay. He hadn't known anything else before, so if I don't talk to him, how will you know? So I think this is where I channel my mother a lot whenever I'm thinking of how to approach a difficult situation.
I need to channel your mother a little bit more.
We all do. We all do. I mean, the thing is, on the one hand, you are helping somebody else, right? You are opening their mind, broadening their horizons. And that's a wonderful thing. The other side of the coin for me is what Toni Morrison said. It takes time. It takes your time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You are constantly being the educator.
That's
This is
right.
not a role that people ask for, but you're the token somebody, you're the only this and the other that, and you are representing your entire culture. And while it's wonderful, as in Elizabeth's book, for the majority culture children to have someone of color, it's harder
but
for
honestly
children of
speaking,
color.
this wasn't as hard for me as being a woman at work, a woman of color. And I have a
Ah,
story I might share later on with
wow.
you. So in a field that they don't think, they used to speak slowly to us in English to use. I mean, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
and they have so this was nothing for me. Actually, it was not a
Okay,
problem.
got it.
But being at work, and at that time you are trying to prove yourself. You don't know. In this case, our ancestors did it. I don't have to do it. Here you are trying to prove yourself, and that is very tough. That was very tough for me. The working days were very tough. But
Thank you.
that's not what this book is about. So
Right. Yeah.
about
La'Tonya, any thoughts to
I
share?
just think a lot of that's tiring, right? Like you're there to
yeah,
do another job and then having to explain, and you're so, in that moment, we're so gracious to give your time. And I just think people overlook how the impact of that, like the cumulative impact of this happening over and over again. At least I'll speak on my experience. That was one of the reasons why I left one of the colleges I attended. I was just tired of it. I was 18 years old. I felt like I didn't have, why do I have to explain my existence to someone else? That was
right,
my experience of it.
absolutely.
Right. Right. So, I want to talk about, one more topic, kind of, where do we go from here? And I'll get to that in just a minute. But I also want our audience members to think about anything they may want to ask of the authors. So please think about them. You can, and Reed can advise. Reed, should people send them in the chat or hold on to them and ask them live? What would you prefer?
Kind of up to them, but it's probably easier for us to manage in the chat because we can
Okay,
all see it without having to scroll.
great.
Unless someone wants to try raising their hand, and if we don't get to you, then put it in the chat.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, so where do we go from here? This is a fraught time in our country and perhaps in the entire world, right? There's so much othering based on color, many groups of people made to feel like they don't belong, and in very, very serious ways. Um, so, I think the, hold on one second. Yeah. So I'm going to invite each of the authors to comment about their experiences in overcoming some of this, how to combat this feeling of othering, how to spread acceptance and feelings of belonging, and just raise everything and everyone up. It is much harder to raise things up than to tear things down. It takes much more thought and effort. And the three of you have lived this. And you have, yourselves when you were children, Elizabeth, through your children as working adults. And so I would love to hear from you on that. And the one thing that I want to share is I'll share that later. Why don't I invite each of you to speak? La'Tonya, would you like to start on
Sure.
your work? And yeah, please.
Well, I just think when you say, where do we go from here? My question is, well, where is here? I don't think here is that different than before, to be honest, except that there are some things that are really much more explicit. But when I think about when I started the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and George Bush, the senior, was elected, and there was swastikas spray painted on campus. And no one did anything about that. And here I was, 18 years old, out of state student, first person in my family to go to college, and I have to manage all of that. And in fact, there was a debate on campus about should there be a Black cultural center. This is 1988, not 78, not 68, not 58. Should there be a Black cultural center on campus because it was deemed to be racist? And look at where we are now. I think that cultural center is probably considered illegal at this time. So for me, it's really about not what an individual could do. How can I make somebody feel better? How can I educate someone? It's really about systems and acknowledging that we all are part of this system. And I think that when I look at the high school that I went to, the superintendent at one point, um, in order to after the school was desegregated in the 70s, um, the way to keep white families in that school was he created honors programs. That's how the current honor system exists in that high school, was for a way for white families to not leave, not flee, to go to private school. That high school is T.C. Williams High School, which is the subject of the movie Remember the Titans, that so many people love and feel are beloved. And there's a very oversimplified version of desegregation. It makes people feel good. It makes liberals feel good. Like, oh, look, if you just put people on a team together, look at how it all played out. That's not how it plays out. So I think we need to think about what role we all play in perpetuating these things and not leave it to individual folks to figure this thing out and help people feel better about themselves.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. That is so well said. Um, Elizabeth, any comments on, where we are, where to go? How do we achieve, how do we get beyond these terrible times that, as La'Tonya points out, have been, are not exactly new times, but perhaps more of a spotlight today?
Well, I think we have to start with ourselves and our families, and for me, in our family, I think we felt as a family we didn't belong because we were different from everybody else. It was a single white mom and two kids that were brown, and they just that was a big deal. So a large part of my parenting was making sure that we were glued together as a family. And so, I mean, I know that isn't a big thought that goes out, and but if we all take care of our people, we
Yeah.
we can make some strides. I also thought that we shouldn't be. I think when I was ready to publish my book, it was at this time, and I thought, gosh, this book is so, they're going to call this woke. It's so woke, and suddenly we have to think that that a story is too woke, meaning that it can wake you up. I just think that is so bizarre. But, I had people telling me, you have to put that out there, that book, that thought, that story. Otherwise, we're giving in.
Hmm. Yeah, well put, well said. And,
Very well.
I think um, there's, what you said about kind of fostering those feelings within your family. I think what is also important about that is each of us to go and change the system, to go and overturn, uh, kind of like extremely outdated and unjust policies and systems and laws. We need the strength and the courage to step forth and do that. And, what you are proposing, foster your own family, um, that gives you courage. If you know that your family has your back, that they support you, that they believe in you, they know that you're doing the right thing, you will feel that much more comfortable and confident to say, this is not right, to speak out, which is needed more and more. Staying silent is not going to change anything. So thank you for that comment.
Mhm.
Neerja, and thoughts from you?
Yeah, this is in a way a complicated subject for me, and it has to be unpacked in different ways. There is the legal and system aspect of it. There is the cultural and people, human beings. We as human beings, as wonderful as we are, why do we make gangs? As kids. So I try to unpack it, and the reason I bring this up is that when I have approached my kids' schools, working with the PTAs and the school system, it's a completely opposite approach to when I have done it at work, when I have tried to change the system. Okay, because changing the system is the one. You can shout all you want, nobody's going to hear you. Okay, so you have to change the system. So at work, that's what I did, and I could give an example if you have time. But in school, I thought it was a social thing. The system was, I mean, it's an education. The teachers were trying to do, they wanted paid, they were doing whatever. And, but everybody was at least trying to teach, whether they taught my kids or not. I had one problem child and one okay child. So, you know, this is so I saw the thing. But it's not like I'm going to change the school system. I have to work with the teachers to be fair to everybody in there, to treat my child like any other child and teach. And so with them, I worked more at the social level, and that was through volunteering. And you can say I spent time on a one. It is exhausting. It is exhausting, and I was working full time. So I used to volunteer for the all-day trips when you actually get one-on-one time with the teachers, and you can actually talk to them. And my firm belief is at the end of the day, we are all good people. I just have to get them on my side. And in a way, it works. There's a really interesting debate I had about kids going to prom. I wasn't too much into my kids dating. My girls, I wanted them to study and sports and this and that, and no time for anything else.
You're a good Indian mom.
Good Indian mom, right? But then I also wanted them to party. I mean, we were, my parents would get, so I said, why can't she go to the prom? She can go with the girlfriends. Why does she have to have a boyfriend? And at that time they said no. But later on, 10 years later, the girls have all girl parties. I don't know if you know, in San Francisco, there's moms who are dancing. So I think social takes time and takes talking. And I think if it is a system, I think you have to change the system. And the system can be changed. It's at least in the work situation that I'm coming from, where women hiring women. My work has a lot been hiring technical women, and how to get them into the workplace and how to get them heard. It's a different approach. So but I think it's a very exhausting topic at the end of the day.
Mhm.
You are tired, and different people need different approaches. So this at work, one guy needs one approach, one guy needs the other. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
and we do have to work 10 times harder. I mean, nobody's going to deny that, right? So
yes, yes. And I think the organizations that kind of have everyone's back. I do admire them greatly, and I support them wholeheartedly. The ACLU, the system level changes, where you identify, like even this, example of the lawyer Neil Katyal, who took the case to the Supreme Court about these tariffs and won, right? That was a major victory. And so now we're going to see all the repercussions from that, but various other lawsuits takes time, right? The wheels of justice, as they say, they turn slowly, and it's kind of frustrating. But certainly there's much to be done on that front as well. But yeah, so uh, let me look at the questions. I know Deepka wants to make an announcement. Let me ask, okay, I'm trying to find Joyce's question. Hang on one second. Who can see the
I just sent
question?
it to you, Raji.
What's that?
So I just sent it to you, the one that says I've only read Elizabeth's book. You have a message?
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder?
Oh, sorry, I have a cold.
Oh,
I sent you a private message for Joyce's question. Is it Joyce's question? Yeah. She said, I've only read Elizabeth's book, but her
ah,
story of the trips she made to Peru as she arranged for the adoption of each child was incredible. There was a lot of civil unrest, and she was there as a minority working through the process. How did she feel about those experiences?
Elizabeth, yeah. How did you feel about the process, working there as a minority in Peru, working through the process of adopting your children through all the civil unrest?
Yeah, it was interesting, particularly going back to Peru with my two kids and how they kind of fit right in. And I was the one that was different, like when we were in Cusco and everything, the kids looked just like everybody else. And and it was kind of a different experience for me. The first part of the book is about going, adopting the kids and living in Peru for a while. And uh, it was pretty harrowing. Luckily, I didn't know what I was getting into. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been brave enough to do it.
Wow, thank you. Kathleen Williams asks, how does each author feel that their story balances the personal story with the societal story? What do they think will most affect the reader? Let me invite Neerja to comment, and then La'Tonya.
So the personal story versus, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Balances the personal story with the societal story.
Ah,
What do
okay.
you think will most affect the reader? Yeah.
Right, right. So as I tell the personal story, and I go through from the childhood stages, school, to adjusting when I come here, to my mother's adjustment when she comes here. She comes to live with me in the later on life, and how she adjusts. And I put it in the larger context of what is happening in each of our situations. You heard about the school in India. Similarly, I have stories about how I took lessons from there to when they were being schooled here because they ran into very similar situations. And then I say how my mother, like when I went to a park or something, and there was some issues. How my mother would have, she was a very brave woman, so she would have taken on people, how she would have done things like that. So I put each story into the larger context and then build a universal sort of a learning that applies to society and to the system in our current environment. And a lot of it, the core of it is that before you can belong, you have to give. A lot of it is you have to give love. If you give love, eventually you will have the understanding of the other. A lot of it is about giving and building community. It's about creating the bridges and creating the bridges specifically by going out to the other quote unquote other, person who might be considered other.
Thank you, Neerja. La'Tonya.
Yeah, my book is pretty different from what I can tell. I pretty much stay in the moment. There's not a meta commentary about what is happening. You're you're experiencing things through my eyes at least as I remember them. The primary goal of this book, though, is to challenge the way people think and talk about first-gen students and their families. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of conversation, or things are shifting, but it's very deficit, like what they don't know, what our parents don't know, all the things that we lack, the struggle, the hardship. And while there is hardship in this story, there's a lot of joy in the story as well, too. And I really wanted to focus on what my mom, my single mom who had me when she was 17 years old, like what gifts did she actually give me that will probably could be considered unconventional, that someone would say, well, why would she do those things? Why would she take a 12-year-old to a Prince concert and let her roam around? And that's a very deficit approach, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this young woman had this amazing experience to not meet, but to see one of the greatest musicians of all time, and how that filled me with confidence and actually prepared me to go on to college because I knew I had the support of my mom. But I'm not calling it out specifically. Again, you're seeing it from my perspective. And then just so you know, there's a number of cliffhangers as well too, but I'm not necessarily tying it explicitly to a larger social problem.
Thank you. And Elizabeth?
Well, I think I frequently refer to the societal
Hmm.
influences on us at the time, particularly, when we were in Peru, what was happening there at the time, how that affected us. Um, I just think all of the we don't live in a vacuum, so you want to have all of these parts of your story that affect everything. And I would say, La'Tonya, that your book has a lot of society in the music that you bring in and the
Good
you
point. Yeah,
yeah
there are references for
you
sure. Yeah.
yeah well you can sing along.
Yes, you absolutely can.
Yeah, and speaking of singing,
Mhm.
inspired by you, Latanya, and recent fabulous events, I want to share one final quote, and then I think we're ready to wrap up. So, if you'll watch the Super Bowl, you probably saw this. Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, or Bad Bunny, who said, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." Harry Potter, Bad Bunny, John Powell, wherever you look, the wisdom is that the only thing more powerful than hate is love. So why don't we stop there? We are at our time. And, I want to thank everyone for joining us and staying with us through to the end. And our three wonderful authors, thank you for these beautiful books. And thank
I
you for,
have to make announcement.
yes, please.
Yeah, so our next two events are in Cupertino Library and Saratoga Library. I put that in chat. It's on March 21st and March 29th. It's with author Vinita Gupta about her book, The Women in Need. And you can register on siliconvalleyreads.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepka. All right. So thank you again, everyone. Just so you know this, you know already that the event has been recorded, thanks to Reed. And Reed works all sorts of magic, and then she puts it on the Silicon Valley Reads website. So if your friends, your family, relatives, they weren't able to join, send it to them. And
And you're welcome to email me at siliconvalleyreads@gmail.com and I can send it to you quicker.
Okay.
Thank you all
Do
so much.
Raju,
yes,
thank
yeah.
you. You're
Thank
you're an
you. Thank you,
amazing
Raji.
facilitator.